Morning, guys. Mark Fresh Protect Dog Training with Benoît. Now things get a little boring because you'll see the same things, happening again and again. I've got the dog to a certain point, but there's a couple things I need to teach him real important before he goes home. He'll be going home in the first of the next month, which is coming up. I think we've got about 9 days left. So if I had my druthers, this would be when I wanted to try to take the dog out and do what we call flooding. And the way to explain flooding to you in a layman's terms, the best way to understand it, is when they get military dogs and they're working the dogs in bomb detection, scent work of any type, they use a toy. They use a ball, they use a towel, rolled up towel, whatever it may be. A lot of times it's balls in the military. It's the tennis balls. And so what they'll do is they'll get the dog high on that toy as his reward and make that all encompassing. So when he searches, he knows that he's going to get his reward. And this creates a lot of what they call ball happy, where the dog's so driven and goes crazy over the balls. And that's needed for the work they're doing. But when you bring that dog back home, let's say you want to decommission him and you bring him back home, a lot of times that'll get in the problem, especially if the dog's been military dog, been trained for protection, and he's aggressive because he's been trained to be so, and you're trying to decommission him and trying to take the wind out of the sails, so to speak, and get him to relax and go to a normal lifestyle. There's a lot of work involved with it. Well, one of those things they'll do with a dog is just totally psycho and ball happy. They'll take a whole bucket of balls and they'll put the dog in the kennel, and they'll pour a whole bucket of balls in there, and they'll leave the balls in there with the dog. After a while, the dog just becomes blasé. He don't care about balls anymore because they're everywhere, and his nature starts to change, and he starts to devalue that item because it's in his face all the time, right? They call that flooding, right? Flooding in that perspective is a very good example, because I do the same thing when I work with a dog with aggression. I used to have a class I'd go to, but they moved on. They used to have 30, 40 people on the weekend, and I could take a dog that was working like this that was very, had a lot of problems in reactivity, etc. And this dog's problem is dog aggression. And I would take him out to that class because I know what I'm doing. I got my skill levels out there. I would value that class more so for the beginning and the end of class. When people are neutral, they're sitting around drinking their coffee, they're having a cigarette, they're getting ready for class, they're going up to the table to pay their money. And that's when I would be working the outside edges and take my dog in a neutral attitude and just walk around the area. And there was a lot of dogs everywhere, right? And that's what this dog needs at this point in time. And unfortunately, I don't have that ability. I don't have a class to be able to give him. If you guys are out there and you're a trainer and you're in my area and you've got a big class that you'd like to let me take advantage of, give me a yell, because that's what he needs right now. He needs to be flooded. He needs to have a class structure that we do some pass-bys and all kinds of things that you can set up with a structured event towards reactivity and dealing with that. And it's something I'm pretty good at. But again, if I don't have the resources, and that's 90% of my problem in life in general, I don't have a bunch of resources. I don't have kids all over the place that are there for me. I'm way out here in the boonies all by myself. So one-man army trying to get the job done, it makes it hard sometimes. If I do get anything like that, I've got to drive a long way. Like I can go to Oscar's place or whatever, give him a yell and see if I can get him to help me out or whatever. But without that resource, without that flooding, that's the next thing he needs, we're going to have a hard time down, because you only meet so many dogs. I went to the Home Depot this weekend, and there was a nice low energy older dog, spaniel of some sort. Nope. Down. And I kind of set the behavior up. Nope. Come here. Down. Good. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm chattering, so he thinks I'm not paying attention to him. He wants to get away with not minding. You stay. So in a general sense, I used that dog as a patsy dog. I went towards it, and sure enough, he went off on the dog, and I could do a right-hand turn or right about and get away from that and correct the dog for his behavior. You got to have some mix of consequence in it. It's not going to work if you don't show the dog the consequence in his behavior. But how you do that, and that's why we float the bubble, and we make sure that he understands how to win and give him plenty of praise when he's doing the right thing, and float that bubble in and around, and where you're doing your patterns of turns and everything, where the dog is in tune with you, and then you float the bubble over towards what may make him go off. And you want to try to keep it just under threshold, because you're trying to catch the dog when their brain goes into that gear. right? When the dog's brain just starts thinking about it. Well, me as a trainer has been doing this since I was 12. I can read the animal and see it coming before it happens. Not everybody can do that. That's a skill that comes with acquired with practice, reading the animal and seeing it's coming. Well, this is what I've got to try to teach the owners, because we've got to get them doing it in such a way that they actually set the dog up in the right way so that it's conducive to the dog's learning and growth, and he learns not to do this. Do I want him to go nose to nose with another dog? No, because dogs in their world are not, they're social creatures within their pack, okay? Anything outside of the pack gets driven away, and that's why they do it. The pack will drive it away or corner it and kill it, right? Because that's their territory. They're territorial, and that's kind of what they're doing when they're trying to shove it back and away with that aggression. They're trying to get it to go away, right? And so, nope, down, good. So understanding the nature of the dog and dog psychology is very important. And we're talking pack instinct, right? They are very loyal to their pack, and they have a hierarchy, and all those things happen within the pack, but they're not a social animal outside of their pack. And people say, well, what about dog parks? We go to the dog park all the time. Reality and truth, anybody that's worth their salt, that's a trainer, that's worth anything, knows better than to use a dog park as a conducive place to teach the dog to get around along other dogs. There's no control in it, right? The dog, there's a lot of different people. They all have their own opinions. They all think they know everything. And reality and truth, that's not a conducive environment. When we're going to try to tackle something like reactivity and aggression, we want a structured class where everybody has their dogs on leash, and we do things in such a way that we're making conducive for training to get the dog to be accepting of those other dogs within his area and in that area, and not be reactive, right? But they're not to be friendly. People think of the word socialization as the you want, because with us, socialization is getting around for a tea party, having a good time, and enjoying each other. We're being social, right? Dogs don't do things that way, right? Especially outside of their pack. Right? Can I get the dog to go out to a class structure and to be in that environment and to deal with that in that time frame? Sure, right? But dog parks are there because man came up with a way to keep people from letting their dogs shit all over the park and not pick it up. It's our behavior they're trying to correct. So they create this little area that we can go into, and we can have all our dogs out there, and they can shit and it's in that contained area. And ever the people have their area, in other words, the outside park for the general public, and now people can get along a little better because we don't have shit all over the park, right? It's the human behavior that's the problem, right? So that's what dog parks are for. And then when they use them, that's like Russian roulette. Let's talk about dog parks a little bit. You take your young puppy out there and you think you want your dog to be social, right? Because of this word of socialization. It's not really socialization. I wish they would change the word to environmental. That's what we care about. You want your dog to be strong? Use the environment. Use your outside environment. People, places, things, that sort of thing. I ran into that to a lady, I call them Karens. They get all upset. They don't know what's going on. And I went over to use this dog real quick because this person was getting his cart and going to go in the store, and had the situation. And the lady saw the dog aggression and she got all panicked and she started coming over. Yeah. Reality and truth is, I've been doing this since I was 12. I'm good at what I do. That dog wasn't going to get hurt at all. And I've come that close for years, right? Because I've got my timing and everything. I know what's going to happen before. I can tell you all kinds of stories. And I've never had anybody bit. There's never been a dog fight. I'm pretty good at what I do. That doesn't make her wrong. I mean, I understand her. Oh my God, I understand the reaction in that regards, but it's hard for me to deal with because I need environment. I have to have environment to be able to fix these dogs so that they can live a life. Okay, that's the other thing. You're talking about what we're dealing with right now and reactivity in general. The two things that are going to happen with a dog that becomes reactive, if you don't work at it real hard as a puppy and develop that dog properly and put all this work that I'm talking about with this series in regards to Benoît and reactivity, if you don't put the work in when they're young and work real hard to make sure that dog is again, I don't like the word social, but you get my point, socialized to the point where at least he's stable, right? And he's not going off on dogs. He's not being stupid, right? If you don't work hard on that when they're puppies and really direct, especially with a lot of these breeds, the Prescott Canarios, the Connie Corsos, the Mastiff breeds that have tendencies and propensities to do this behavior because they've been bred to be that way. It's not their fault. It's us. It's man that does this stuff, right? So they've been bred to have insecurity on purpose, to be more aggressive in their territorial, and their territorial aggression is very high, right? Think about pit bulls as an example, and they're not a bad dog. They're a damn good dog, but you have to understand the nature of the beast, right? Pit bulls and a lot of these dogs have been bred to handle pain, right? To think of pain as, and they go up in aggression, they don't go down. That's why I don't use a pinch collar in a general sense for a dog that has a reactivity problem, because that pain is going to flood the brain and it's counterproductive to what I'm trying to work on, right? I can kind of get through it and still use the pinch, but in general sense, I always suggest a dominant dog collar. It takes the wind from the dog, and the dog can't breathe, and when he can't breathe, his brain goes to a different place, and it's more conducive for what I'm trying to achieve. Where the pinch collar is designed to do taps. Okay, it's not designed to have constant pressure on the dog or pull the dog up and hang him up in the air because you're trying to control the dog from being aggressive. That's a flood of pain to the dog's brain that's going to change that dog's nature. Now with this dog, he's a little insecure, a little weak. He's not a mastiff, right? But if I use that on a pitty or a mastiff breed and I put him up in the air on a pinch collar, he's going to get worse. He's not going to get better. Okay, and that's the big thing that a lot of these trainers don't understand. They start talking about pinch collars being used for reactivity. Wrong. Use a dominant dog collar, that paracord that's going to be safe for their neck, and it stretches a little bit. Get it up high on the neck, and then when the dog has a tendency to do something that's wrong in that regards that you're dealing with, you can put him up in the air a little bit and take the wind away from the dog, right? So that the dog chokes out, and now his brain goes to a different place because he can't breathe. Think of it like a person that's swimming and they start to drown. That panic that comes in, the brain's not working at all. It's pure panic. The lifeguard knows better than to get near that person, right? Come here, you. So that is very important to understand, that the pain will flood the dog's brain. It's not conducive to dealing with reactivity and that sort of a situation that you're trying to deal with, right? The dominant dog collars will take the wind away from the dog, and now the dog chokes out and their brain goes to a different place because they can't breathe. Oh, hey, dude, I can't breathe. And it's a much better thing, and it works very well. It's excellent, right? That's why we use the dominant dog collars. That's why they become so popular within the professional dog training field in dealing with certain things that we're dealing with. And reactivity would be one of those things, aggression to that degree. Reactivity and aggression towards you, towards humans, towards dogs. It's always a dominant dog collar that'll be a lot better than a pinch collar, right? Where does the dog's head go to when I'm dealing with this, right? Again, the pinch collar is going to flood the brain with pain, and that pain is going to cause the aggression to get worse, and especially in a lot of these aggressive breeds that you're dealing with. Cane Corsos and Presses and all the pitty breeds and all the Mastiff breeds that have been basically have a tendency to be, some of them have been bred to fight. And think about the genetics in that regards. They want them to take pain and be able to go up in aggression. So pain to them means I want to get more aggressive, right? And that's exactly the problem, right? But if you choke the dog out, you take their wind away, their brain goes to a different place, and it's a lot more conducive to being able to recondition the dog in the right way, right? All right, I got a little sidetracked in some of my stuff this morning, but I wanted to stop and talk about that. That's what I've got to try to teach the customers when they come in now. They've got to get off the couch and they've got to work real hard to get these turns and their timing, and to grow confidence within themselves that they can handle this and not be afraid of it, right? That's the biggest thing, is the confidence involved. With me, I've been doing it since I was 12. I'm very confident that I can stop a dog and not even get that close to the dog. I've been doing it a lot of years, right? And I see it coming before it happens. It's important to realize it's all about where the dog's brain is at any specific time, the moment. That's why we talk about timing. Timing is real important in training. So when I say, yes, I've got a time involved with everything I'm doing. When I give a sit stay and I'm trying to build duration on my stays, I'm actually saying stay, and then I walk away, and then right away I'm coming back with the food. And as time goes along, I stretch that time period. And when I'm doing it, let's go ahead and give you a little demo of it. Good boy, you ready? Are you ready? Are you getting bored? Are you getting bored? Are you? Yeah, your boy, good. With me. Good boy, there you go. Good boy, good. 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 Stay. When I step away, there's a time level on how long I'm away from the dog and what I'm doing. Good. 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 He almost broke. Good. Good boy. And he almost makes this look easy. He's already had some basic classes, so he understands a lot of this already. Down. Good. That's my boy. Good. There you go. Good boy. Stay. Good. So there's a time level and how long I do things. Good, Benno. Good, Benno. Yep. Good boy. Good. Okay. So that time was a time. I said, Benno, there's a little bit of a pause, and then there's a yep. There's a little time in there. 1001, 1002, boom, spring away, right? So time level is important. Down. Good. Okay, and then as time goes along, that duration gets longer and longer. I get longer downstays. Then I increase my distractions and everything, and how much challenge, I put on the dog to do it for a longer period of time, right? So time levels are something you need to be aware of. But in reactivity, good. And we're dealing with floating that bubble. If I have a dog and we're doing a pass by, I'm reading my dog and I go by and the dog's over here. I can see my dog's body language. I can see that he's going to spring and try to attack that other dog. And then I would turn one of my turns. And I'm going to teach this customers how to do this, where I do a right hand turn, right? Pivot on the ball right, and I'm right away. That dog's that way, and I'm driving the opposite way away from it, out of the danger zone for the dog, and the dog gets corrected. And I redirect the dog back into me. Good boy, good. And then I float my bubble out there. I do some of these turns, reaffirming the positive side, showing the dog where the wind's at, and then I'll float my bubble right back towards the problem. And I'll keep working on it, right? So flooding is an important concept to understand. When Cesar Millan does it a lot, you don't realize he's doing it. When he goes over with a problem dog, let's see the dog has fear of the stairs. He doesn't walk up the stairs. He'll take the dog and he'll actually drag the dog up the stairs. A lot of motivation. Dog gets to the top, a lot of high praise, and people get all freaked out about that. But actually what you're doing is you're forcing the dog to face their fears, and it's done, it's over with. Within a couple sessions, the dog's fear of the stairs is over with. Right? It doesn't mean that you need to be totally abusive with it, but you need to be in such a way that you realize that you could spend 6 months coaxing a dog with food and everything, trying to get him to go up 1 step, then 2 steps, and you could do that purely positive. It would take you 6-8 months to get the dog to finally go up the stairs, right? It makes you feel good because you're being so kind to your animal, but reality and truth, it doesn't do anything for the dog. Get it done and over with, get to the other side, get to the positive side. Before you know it, you're going up the stairs with all kinds of praise, maybe throw a ball, whatever it may be, and the dog's fear is over with, right? It's done and it's over with, and that's a lot more humane to me, right? Now let's talk about training in general. Training in general, there's a lot of reasons for it, and it's for you think of behaviors. Heel, sit down, stay, the dog down, so look at these behaviors he does, okay? But reality and truth is, it's not about the behavior, it's about where the dog's head's at in the behavior. Where's his mental attitude? That's what matters, right? And when you do training, you give the dog a life. He can now go out in public with you. He can go participate in what you're doing. He's a well-mannered animal that you can take places. And in today's society, that to me is a great thing. I can take the dog out with the family. He's good with people. But if I have an over-aggressive dog that's reactive and I've got to worry about it, he's a liability, I can't take him anywhere. Or I feel like I can't. And then embarrassment sets in. People are uncomfortable with what they're going through, and then they end up getting rid of the dog. Whose fault is it? Not the dog's. The dog's just being a dog. You have the ability to think. You have the ability to work through things. And so you just getting off the couch, putting in the work, and really struggling to try to learn and grow and get over that hump, is what I call it, is a lot more advantageous to you and a lot more advantageous to the dog. You've now given him a life. You understand that? You've given him a life. That's what's important. And so it's frustrating for me as a trainer when I run into the general public with all their preconceived ideas. You ever walk around, you have your dog or any dog conversation, and everybody steps right up and they start acting like they're an expert. They're telling you how to do things. They're telling you what to do with your dog. It's like raising a child, but a dog's a little different. So they think they're okay to go ahead and step right in there and act like an expert. Everybody's an expert, right? Very few people really are, right? I don't like using words, labels, and certificates and all that stuff, because I've learned by doing and putting my hard work into doing it, okay? So going to these purely positive things, some of these organizations where you get online, you take this little test, and now poof, I'm a trainer because I took a test. I don't care how much intellectual knowledge you take in. You learn by doing, right? You can learn to be a welder and find out how much that book learning is going to do for you. It's the actually physically doing it that's going to matter, because then you know what your melting point is. You know all the things you got to do to weld, right? And it's practice. Practice, practice, practice. And the more you do it, pretty soon, now you're actually doing what you need to do to control your animal and understand it, right? So there's a lot of it's science, a lot of it's intellectual, and all dog trainers are talking about it all the time. I do it too. But at the same time, it's dogs under your belt that is going to matter. How many dogs and how many situations that I've had, thousands of them, and each one of them teach me something, right? This guy is a great example of that. His fear being is so pronounced. It's so dim. And the trainers that here, they were at a class and they basically got asked to leave. In other words, they got kicked out of the class because they didn't have control of the animal. And right away, the trainer told them it was genetics. There is a certain amount of genetics, but if you take a puppy, if this dog was a young dog and I molded and shaped that puppy, you may never see it, right? The weakness in the genetics, right? We see it when we get in higher echelon training. We're doing protection. Then we're looking at things and we're saying, oh, some of that's genetic, right? So in other words, starting out with a good, strong dog is always better than having a weak dog, you know? So it's a lot more work to deal with when you have a weak dog than a strong dog. So that coddling nature that we do in our human side of psychology is to nurture and, oh, my little baby, my little snookum. That's a big proponent of humans, right? That's why we get dogs, because we want something we can love, right? And love on, right? And again, male versus females. Females have a tendency to do it more, but don't. I've ran into a few of them where the wife has looked at me. I've given all these little educational lectures that I do with my customers and things, and the wife looks at me and says, "It's not me, it's him." So men do it too, right? It's part of our human psychology. You want something we can love. That's why we get dogs, right? But a dog has been bred for a purpose. It's been bred to do a job. And so from my perspective, being a professional trainer, I look at it and I say, what has that dog been bred to do? And what do I need to do as far as a skill, a talent in life? Do I need nose work? Do I need the dog's nose? I'm going to go buy a dog that's going to fit that bill, you know, a little spaniel or something like that, you know. I have a friend of mine that actually bought my nose work, actually built my nose work stuff. That excellent dog with a little small dog. He's got dogs jumping up and playing basketball and doing all. He had a couple little spaniel dogs that he had, and he was working them through nose work. He ended up selling them to Cop Shop. Best dog in the world. They'll be getting into the cars and all that stuff. Small little dog, unobtrusive, and their nose is like no other. Right? If you want nose work, that's the dogs to get. There's a lot of good ones, but you got to go out and find what the dog's been bred to do. What's his purpose in life? And then when you pick a dog, you got to realize. That's why we keep telling people, and the public won't listen to us. It's all the popularity of the Wick movies, and they think they know what they're getting into. And then 90% of the time, the dog goes to the pound and gets put down. There's thousands of these Malinois now. They're bred all over the place. We did the same thing to Lassie. Remember Lassie, the movie? Lassie was all about a dog basically that came, Rin Tin Tin, was about an army dog, military. The military was so popular back then, and the military dog that came back home after the war, right? And they made a movie about him, Rin Tin Tin, right? Well, that affected the German Shepherd. The dogs have been very severely affected because of our human society wanting to get a dog because of the movies. You know, the romanticism. Oh, cool, I want that. They look at it and they think that's what they can have. Not without work. I don't care. You buy a Malinois, you're going to get a mad case unless you put in the work to develop and mold and shape that clay to produce the product that you see on TV. Okay, that's the whole thing. I get a crack up the public. They think they want to jump into this, and then in the end, you've heard me say it before. If you watch my videos for any length of time, the only one that suffers is the dog. Right? It's not the human. It's the dog. Right? All right, I'll let you guys go. Enough of my morning yak session. I got a little sidetracked. We didn't really spend much time with him. We're going to go to the park next. Going to go to the park, huh? Yeah. I need to teach him look. So I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to spend some time to teach him the word. The look game is what we're concentrating on now. I'm not mixing it in, our other stuff. All right, talk to you guys later. Mark Fresh, Protect Dog Training, signing off.